He despised her for being fat. But that night, in the middle of a luxury restaurant, he was the one who swallowed his own pride. Michael Carter believed he had won at life. He was next to a slim, attractive girlfriend, ready to show off his new upgrade after the divorce. Everything seemed perfect until the past decided to show up right in front of him. Sitting across the dining room, his ex-wife, the same woman he humiliated because of her body, was there radiant, confident, with a glow he had never seen before. And in front of everyone, a billionaire knelt at her feet, holding a ring that made the entire restaurant fall silent. In that instant, Michael realized the trophy he'd been seeking wasn't the woman by his side. It was a value he himself had lost. Michael Carter applied the imported cologne with the same precision of someone preparing for an invisible war. He adjusted his suit, checked his watch, and smiled at the mirror, satisfied with the image he saw, the perfect portrait of success. That night wasn't just dinner. It was a symbol. For him, every detail mattered. The sports car parked in front of the restaurant, the discreet shine of his shoes, the look in Jennifer's eyes, his new girlfriend, reflecting confidence and beauty. She was the type of woman who attracted stares, slim, elegant, with the confidence of someone who knows the effect she causes. Michael loved that. Upon entering the restaurant, he felt like the center of the universe. The atmosphere was worthy of a movie. Tables decorated with candles, crystal glasses gleaming under the amber light, waiters gliding like shadows between contained laughter and whispers of important people. It was the ideal stage to show off his new life. He didn't just want to dine, he wanted to be seen. He wanted to prove he was better, more prosperous, more desired. It was as if the luxury around him was an extension of his ego, a mirror where he could see reflected the image he always wanted to show the world. The problem is that the more he tried to convince others he was happy, the further he got from his own truth. While Jennifer talked animatedly about international trips, designer clothes, and influencers she knew, Michael nodded with an automatic smile. On the surface, he seemed like the perfect man, attentive, charming, confident. But inside, there was a constant noise, a voice whispering how empty it all sounded. It was strange. He had next to him a woman who fit all the standards society applauds, and still, he felt something essential was escaping him. Each of Jennifer's laughs seemed rehearsed, each gesture calculated. She was pleasant company, but without depth, and although he pretended not to notice, deep down he knew it wasn't love. It was performance, a well-staged theater to convince the audience that his life was improving. He didn't want to miss his ex-wife, but the memory of her insisted on crossing his thoughts, like a shadow that refuses to leave. Sarah, with her curves, her calm voice, her always understanding gaze, represented everything he didn't know how to value. Michael had despised her, thinking love needed to come packaged in a slim body and magazine-worthy gestures. And now, sitting across from Jennifer, he realized, without admitting it, that the beauty he was showing off was fragile, fleeting, and completely incapable of filling the silence inside him. The waiter approached and refilled the glasses, and Michael raised his with the elegance of someone who dominates the scene. He toasted with Jennifer and smiled at the people at the surrounding tables, enjoying the feeling of being admired. He liked to believe everyone saw him as a successful man, the one who bounced back after a divorce. But the truth is that, under the glow of the lights and the sound of the piano, there was a discreet loneliness, the kind that doesn't show on social media, but eats away inside. With each sip of wine, Michael felt his mind traveled places he swore to forget. He remembered the simple nights with Sarah, the improvised dinners, the sincere laughs. He also remembered the arguments, the cruel criticisms, the thoughtless words he used to hurt her. Back then, he thought love was measured in appearance, not in presence. Now, without realizing it, he was reliving everything he tried to erase. While pretending to listen to Jennifer, he noticed his reflection in the glass and felt a deep discomfort, as if he were looking at a stranger. It was the same face, but the look was different. Empty, distant, confused. And without knowing it, fate was approaching in silence, ready to show him that life always finds a way to make us face what we've been running from for so long. The clinking of silverware and the murmur of customers formed a perfect backdrop for the night Michael believed he was dominating, until a simple movement in the distance froze his smile. He turned distractedly, looking for the waiter, But his gaze stopped at a table near the window. For an instant, time seemed to slow down. There she was, Sarah, the woman he had left behind, the one he once considered a wrong turn. But she wasn't alone. Across from her, a silver-haired man was conversing with elegance, gesturing calmly, and the sparkle in Sarah's eyes was something Michael had never seen before. The soft candlelight danced across her face, highlighting a serenity that unsettled him. His mind refused to accept what he saw. Sarah, the woman he despised for being obese, now seemed different. There was in her a confidence, a lightness, a kind of silent glow that didn't come from the body, but from the soul. And it was there, amid glasses and gazes, that Michael felt the first blow, that of regret he still didn't know how to name. He tried to disguise it, straightened his posture, and returned his gaze to Jennifer, who was talking about a fashion show in Milan, completely oblivious to the change in his expression. But Michael was no longer listening to her. His focus was glued to that table, where each gesture of Sarah seemed the opposite of the image he carried in his memory. She no longer shrank, didn't hide her body in shame, didn't seem out of place. She was there, taking up space with dignity, with grace, like someone who finally understood her own worth. The man across from her spoke and smiled, and Sarah responded naturally, as if she were where she always deserved to be. Michael, for his part, felt his chest tighten. The feeling was strange, a mix of jealousy, surprise, and something even worse, shame. He realized that while he had spent the last few years trying to prove superiority, she had moved forward. And not just moved forward, she had flourished. It was like watching one of those real-life stories you think are improbable. The woman who was humiliated, rejected, discredited, being reborn right before the eyes of the one who belittled her. The waiter called him twice before he noticed. Michael blinked, returning to the present, and faked a smile to disguise the turmoil forming inside him. The wine seemed bitter now, and Jennifer's laughter forced. From where he sat, he could see Sarah's delicate gesture touching the silver-haired man's arm, and something in that touch, simple but full of affection, hit him hard. For a second, he thought about getting up, going over there, saying something, anything, but he couldn't. He remained paralyzed, as if he were a spectator of his own life. The image haunted him, Sarah smiling, confident, vibrant. The contrast was painful. Jennifer could be everything he considered ideal, but Sarah was everything he had lost without realizing it. Michael's heart beat erratically, not from love, but from the impact of facing his own mistake. It was the first crack in the armor he had been wearing for years. And, without knowing it, he was about to witness a scene that would change everything he believed about value, power, and love. Michael remained motionless for a few seconds, watching Sarah with the intensity of someone trying to decipher a dream. It wasn't possible that she was the same woman. Her posture, the way she smiled, the gaze both firm and light at the same time, nothing resembled the Sarah he knew. That woman who used to speak softly, who hid her arms in shame, who lowered her eyes whenever he criticized her, seemed to have completely disappeared. In her place was someone who radiated a serene self-confidence, a kind of strength that didn't shout, but imposed itself by the simple fact of existing. Michael tried to understand what was happening inside him. Was it curiosity? Was it anger? Was it longing? He didn't know. All he could feel was a knot tightening in his chest, an almost physical discomfort, as if each laugh of hers hit him directly. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, that he didn't miss her, that this was just surprise. But the more he observed, the more he realized how much his pride was melting, and that put him in a panic. Jennifer, by his side, continued talking about trivialities, the wine, the music, the handsome waiter, without noticing Michael's lost gaze. He pretended attention, but inside, he was fighting a war between past and present. How could someone he despised so much now radiate such fullness? He remembered the times he mocked her body, the times he disguised embarrassment walking beside her on the streets, the cruel jokes he made to feel superior. Sarah endured in silence, trying to be enough for a man who never truly saw her. And now, ironically, it was he who was shrinking in his chair, trying to hide the discomfort. Jealousy gnawed at him, but pride prevented him from admitting it. He couldn't accept that an obese woman, yes, that same woman he used as a symbol of his failure, had found a path to happiness without needing to change her body for it. It was unbearable to realize that she had become the freest version of herself after leaving him behind. Michael's gaze clung to every detail. Her laughter, the touch of lightness with the silver-haired man, the genuine sparkle in her eyes. And gradually, he began feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, a kind of emptiness that mixed regret with longing. He tried to rationalize, tell himself that Sarah was just pretending, that all of it was theater. After all, he knew her better than anyone, right? That's what he told himself, as if repeating that lie helped him breathe. But the truth is he no longer knew her. The woman before him wasn't the same one he left crying in an empty room, begging him to stay. That woman had been reborn. And the most painful part was knowing he would never be part of that new version. Michael felt his body grow hot, his face flush, and he looked away. But it was too late. Jennifer noticed the discomfort, asked if everything was okay, and he only responded with a shaky yes. Deep down, he knew it wasn't. What he saw at that table wasn't just his ex-wife with another man. It was living proof that when someone learns to love themselves, nothing can stop them, not even the one who once tried to make them feel small. The waiter slowly moved away, and the sound of silverware ceased for a few moments, as if the entire restaurant had held its breath. Michael still tried to disguise his curious gaze, but there was no control left. He was completely absorbed in that scene. The silver-haired man stood up, adjusted his dark blazer, and with impressive tranquility, walked around the table until he was facing Sarah. She, surprised, brought her hand to her mouth, and Michael's heart raced. It was a gesture he knew well, the shock mixed with sincere emotion, the kind of reaction that can't be faked. The entire dining room gradually began to fall silent, and even the orchestra, intuitively, lowered the volume. And then, before dozens of attentive eyes, the man knelt down. That simple, almost cinematic gesture tore something inside Michael. He blinked several times, tried to understand if this was real or a wine-induced hallucination. But no, it was real. The man pulled a velvet box from his pocket, opened it slowly, and revealed a diamond ring that reflected the candlelight as if it had captured fire itself. For an instant, no one breathed. The entire restaurant fell into absolute silence, and Michael's world collapsed in slow motion. The man, with a firm and confident voice, began to speak, and the sound of his words echoed throughout the room. Sarah, you transformed my life. You taught me that love isn't appearance. It's soul. It's what remains when time erases what's superficial. Those phrases, simple and direct, sounded like a sentence to Michael. He felt his face grow hot, his hands sweat, and a suffocating sensation overtook him suddenly. The woman he rejected for not fitting the standards was now loved, admired, and respected by a man the entire world knew. The realization hit hard. That man was Alexander Pierce, the most influential billionaire in the tech sector, a name present on magazine covers, the type of person Michael would never dream of sharing space with. The contrast was cruel. While he tried to prove success through appearances, Sarah was now living it with essence. And the most humiliating part was realizing that her love was being celebrated publicly with an intensity their love never had. The sound of applause filled the room like a wave. Some women cried discreetly. Others recorded the moment with their phones, enchanted by the gesture. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, nodded silently, and Alexander placed a ring on her finger. They embraced, and in that embrace was something all the luxury in the world couldn't buy: reciprocity. Michael remained motionless, his gaze lost. Everything around seemed distant, blurred, as if time had stopped just to make him face the consequences of his own ego. Jennifer tried to smile, making a banal comment to break the mood, but he barely heard. Inside, a whirlwind of feelings consumed him: envy, shame, regret, a pain he couldn't explain. The irony was brutal. The woman he once called dead weight now carried on her shoulders the glow of someone who had won, and he, surrounded by luxury, felt like the smallest man in the room. When Sarah and Alexander kissed, Michael looked away, unable to bear it. But it was too late. The image was burned into his mind, and nothing would erase the bitter taste of realizing that true love isn't measured by body, nor by status, but by the courage to see the other when no one else does. Michael Carter remained motionless for several seconds, watching Sarah and Alexander with a mix of disbelief and silent pain. The waiter stopped a few feet away, waiting for his order, but he wasn't there. His mind was imprisoned in the scene before his eyes. Every gesture from Alexander, every word spoken with confidence, every complicit smile from Sarah penetrated his consciousness like an invisible blade. He tried to convince himself that this didn't affect him, that he was secure beside Jennifer, his perfect girlfriend according to the standards he always judged essential. But the truth was brutal. Nothing he possessed mattered in that instant. The weight of the past wounded pride, exposed vanity. Everything mixed into a sensation of absolute emptiness. He recalled every moment he had humiliated Sarah, every cruel comment about her body, every ironic laugh at her insecurity. Everything he believed was right now seemed useless. He felt the knot in his throat tighten, his breathing shorten, and a strange heat rise up his face. The restaurant, which before seemed like a stage for his victory, transformed into a silent courtroom where he was a defendant. The feeling of defeat was complete and crushing. While Alexander knelt and held the ring, Michael realized the absurdity of the situation. The woman he despised for being obese, whom he considered inadequate, was now receiving the love and admiration he never knew how to offer. Every word from Alexander echoed as a reminder of his own failure. "Sarah, you transformed my life," he said, and Michael felt each syllable like a punch to the stomach. He remembered the times he made Sarah feel small, the silent rejections, the veiled criticisms, the looks of disgust he offered. Now, she was a protagonist of her own story, and he just a powerless spectator. The waiter brought another glass, but he didn't even notice it. Every smile of hers, every gesture of affection, every genuine laugh was a reminder of what he had lost. It was impossible not to realize that power had changed hands. He was no longer life's winner, but just a man watching another recognize the value of the one he left behind. The irony was crushing. Michael tried to find comfort in Jennifer, but his mind was distant. Her gaze, as beautiful as it was, seemed lifeless now, a cold reflection before the intensity of the moment. He realized that wealth and appearance couldn't compete with the authenticity and genuine love Sarah was now experiencing. Every applause, every camera click from those recording the moment, every curious look from other restaurant customers was a reminder of how much he had failed. He remembered the improvised dinners with Sarah, the moment of vulnerability he ignored, the times he chose his own vanity over her affection. The pain grew, but there was also an unprecedented clarity. He could never erase what he did, and now he needed to live with his own powerlessness. Sarah, smiling, receiving the marriage proposal, radiated something he had never managed to generate: respect, love, and freedom. Michael felt a knot in his chest so intense he wanted to get up, to run, to disappear, but he remained seated, silently witnessing his own defeat. Every second seemed eternal, and life's lesson, cruel as always, arrived with precision. You don't just lose a person, you lose your own ability to see value where it always was. Time rewound in Michael's mind like an old film, revealing scenes he had tried to forget, but which now presented themselves with colors too vivid to be ignored. He remembered the wedding day, Sarah walking into the church in that white dress, the shy smile hiding the anxiety that always accompanied her. Each step of hers seemed loaded with hope, with blind trust in someone who promised to love her forever. But he, with eyes attentive to superficial details, didn't see the soul that walked there. He saw curves, measurements, numbers he judged insufficient for his idea of perfection. The obese bride, with a giant heart, walked to the altar with faith and genuine love, while he saw her through a lens of silent criticism. And even with a forced smile, she carried the dignity he never managed to see. Michael remembered the nights when Sarah tried to talk about her fears, her insecurities, and he responded with jokes, ignorance, or coldness, as if her body were an obstacle to be overcome, and not the whole woman he had by his side. Each silent rejection, each cruel comment, each disapproving look accumulated like an invisible shadow, weighing on the memory he now saw clearly and painfully. The memories continued, showing moments from parties, dinners, and family gatherings, where Sarah tried to fit in, smile, make the world accept her, and he, Michael, insisted on humiliating her without realizing it. Every compliment she sought was rebuffed with veiled contempt. Every gesture of affection was minimized, as if her very presence were a problem. He also remembered the extramarital affair, a direct result of his own superficiality and inability to see value beyond aesthetics. The betrayal wasn't just an isolated mistake. It was a consequence of years of inattention, of choices guided by vanity, by ego, by the need for external validation. Sarah cried in silence, but never lost her composure. Her suffering was contained. Her tears were hidden from a world that didn't deserve to know them. And even so, she continued working, smiling, living. Michael relived every detail with a mix of regret and pain, realizing that all that accumulated contempt, all those daily small cruelties, had contributed to him becoming just a spectator of her bright future. He remembered the times he tried to make her feel smaller, the criticisms about clothes, appearance, weight, as if true love could be measured by numbers on a scale. Sarah, for her part, accepted the blows with patience and dignity, never fighting back, trying to save a relationship he himself destroyed daily. Michael felt a pang of shame seeing himself now, years later, sitting beside Jennifer, watching Sarah be loved and valued by Alexander. Every memory of the wedding, every gesture of contempt he practiced, every selfish choice, all of it became heavier, more unbearable. He realized he had never been the winner, just a blind man, trapped in his own vanity, who believed he could replace love with appearance. And deep down, a silent question grew inside him. How could someone he despised, whom he humiliated, now live in fullness, while he drowned in regret? It was a painful, cruel, and inevitable lesson, and yet necessary for him to finally see what he had truly lost. After the divorce, Sarah decided she wouldn't let herself be defined by the past, nor by the gaze of someone who never truly saw her. Each morning began with discipline, waking up early to dedicate herself to the work she always loved, architectural restoration. Among paints, brushes, and meticulous details of old buildings, she found not just a profession, but a purpose. With each restored wall, with each recovered ornament, Sarah felt she was also rebuilding her own self-esteem. It wasn't just about earning money or recognition. It was about proving to herself that she was capable of creating, transforming, and flourishing. The outside world perhaps hadn't valued her before, but she discovered that true value doesn't depend on others' gazes. It depends on strength found within. The routine was intense, exhausting at times, but also liberating. She learned to prioritize her passion, to invest in herself. And with each completed project, her smile returned to reflect genuine confidence, not just an effort to please someone. Sarah also sought knowledge. Courses, workshops, and trips related to architecture expanded her horizons and strengthened her independence. Over time, she began to be recognized in the sector, with praised projects, invitations to exhibitions, and consultancies. Her reputation grew solidly and deservedly, unlike the superficial fame Michael always sought through appearances. Each professional achievement served as a reminder that real success comes from effort, from passion and dedication, and not from social status or superficial relationships. Sarah transformed the rejection and humiliation she suffered into fuel to grow. The same man who criticized her and left her for superficiality could never imagine she would build such a full and admirable life. She learned, little by little, that self-respect is more important than any external validation, and that self-love manifests in how we position ourselves before the world. While rebuilding her life, Sarah also reconnected with old friendships, expanded professional circles, and discovered new passions. With each step, she felt more secure, more whole. There was no more room for fear, shame, or feelings of inadequacy. She learned to value each achievement, from small daily victories to major public recognitions. The way of the past became light, transformed into learning and strength. Sarah became the woman she always wanted to be, someone who didn't need Michael's approval or anyone else's to feel complete. The world began to notice her energy, her striking presence, and to respect a woman who was once underestimated because of her body. And deep down, without realizing it, she was preparing for something greater, a love that wouldn't measure value by the physical, but by the soul, by character, by respect, and by the reciprocity she so deserved. Sarah met Alexander as if she were finding a new dimension of life, a man who wasn't impressed by appearances, but who saw value in essence, in personality, in ideas. At first, there was a certain caution, natural after years of disappointment. But the way Alexander listened to her, understood her passions, and shared thoughts about architecture, art, and technology won her heart in a subtle and profound way. Each meeting wasn't marked by expensive gifts or superficial demonstrations, but by long conversations, attentive looks, and gestures of genuine care. Sarah realized she could be vulnerable without fear of being judged. She could laugh at herself, confess insecurities, or share dreams. And Alexander responded with patience and encouragement, never touching on what she had already learned to accept as imperfect parts of herself. For the first time, she didn't need to hide her body, her emotions, or her past, and that gave her freedom she didn't even know she had lost. Their routine was built with respect and reciprocity. Alexander recognized Sarah's hard work, praised her achievements, and always showed interest in her personal and professional growth. He knew how to listen without interrupting, asked questions that demonstrated genuine interest, and when she needed support, he was present without invading, without judging, without trying to mold who she was. That difference made Sarah reflect on previous relationships, especially about Michael, who had belittled her for years. Alexander didn't care about her weight, clothes, appearance, or status. For him, Sarah was admirable for what she did, for what she thought, and for what she represented as a person. And gradually, Sarah realized that this type of love was liberating. There was no pressure, no emotional manipulation, no comparisons. It was a love that grew in trust, in complicity, and in mutual respect. She finally felt she could be complete beside someone who valued her for who she really was. Over time, the relationship gained depth and naturalness. They discussed ideas, projects, and life philosophies, finding intellectual affinities that strengthened their connection. Each meeting was a rich exchange, an opportunity to learn and teach without hierarchies or competition. Sarah discovered that loving someone and being loved doesn't need to be dramatic or superficial. It can be simple, elegant, light, and transformative. And most importantly, Alexander never made her feel she needed to change something about herself to be worthy of affection. He celebrated each of her achievements, from small restoration projects to major recognitions in the professional field. The respect and daily appreciation built a solid foundation that no judgment about body, past, or status could shake. Sarah, for her part, flourished each day, finding joy, confidence, and pleasure in her own life, now shared with someone who saw her wholly. And, although Michael still occupied her memory as an echo of the past, Sarah walked confidently toward the future, without haste, without fear, and prepared for love that finally reflected everything she truly deserved. Michael, unable to accept that Sarah had found happiness, began to act from the shadows, driven by a mix of jealousy, regret, and wounded pride. He couldn't bear the idea of seeing the woman he once despised being valued by another man. Every detail he discovered about Alexander was obsessively analyzed. Every news article, every piece, every social media mention. Everything was scrutinized as if he could find a flaw, a gap that would call their relationship into question. The plan was simple. Reveal to the world some error, some contradiction, anything that would shake the billionaire's impeccable image and somehow diminish Sarah in her own achievement. But no matter how much he researched, he found only integrity, dedication, and respect. Exactly what Sarah had already discovered. Michael began to feel frustration that physically hurt, a knot that wouldn't untie. What was supposed to be a weapon, to tarnish their relationship, transformed into just more proof that he had already lost, and that Sarah, finally, was in control of her own story. When the first rumor began to circulate, Sarah quickly realized what was happening. But instead of hiding, running, or despairing, she decided to face the situation with firmness and dignity. She called a press conference and before cameras and journalists spoke with impressive calm, as if each word had been measured to cut not only the rumors, but also the fears she herself had carried in the past. Sarah spoke about her journey, about her reconstruction after the divorce, about the importance of loving and valuing oneself. She didn't mention Michael directly, but each phrase was a clear message. I own my life, my body, and my choices. Alexander stood by her side, holding her hand, showing that no intimidation was possible, that together they were strong, and that the foundation of their relationship wasn't fragile or superficial. Sarah didn't need protection, but his presence reinforced the confidence that already came from within her. The conference went viral, and millions of people came to see her not as a rejected woman of the past, but as someone who reinvented herself, who respected herself, and who became an example of self-esteem and courage. Michael watched powerless as Sarah spoke and Alexander smiled proudly. Every word of hers, every gesture of firmness, every phrase defending their love seemed to pierce his soul, revealing the depth of his own failure. He realized there was no trick, blackmail, or strategy that could destroy that. Their relationship didn't depend on appearances or others' approval, but on trust, respect, and genuine connection. And most painful, he knew that Sarah, now, was totally independent, emotionally strengthened, and capable of facing any adversity. The echo of the past, of the humiliations and rejections he caused, became even clearer in that moment. He had despised the wrong woman. Sarah not only survived his contempt, but transformed all of that into learning, into success, and into true love. Michael, on the other hand, was just an embittered spectator, watching live the proof that value isn't measured by body, status, or vanity, but by strength, by soul, and by the ability to love oneself above all else. A few days after the scandal, Michael received a discreet, elegant envelope without any hint of extravagance, but loaded with meaning. Upon opening it, he found the invitation to Sarah and Alexander's wedding. The calligraphy, delicate and precise, conveyed respect and affection, but was a small note that tore from a mix of shock and profound introspection. Find something to build for your soul. Michael remained motionless, the paper trembling slightly between his fingers. Each word seemed to weigh tons, and he realized it wasn't a provocation, but a message from someone who had already transformed pain into strength. Sarah, the woman who was once underestimated for being obese, was now happy, fulfilled, and didn't need to prove anything to anyone, much less to him. And he, for his part, found himself before a mirror of his own life, years wasting time on frivolities, trying to please others, chasing status and appearances, without ever looking inward, without ever building anything that truly mattered his own soul. The invitation became a turning point, a watershed that Michael couldn't ignore. For the first time, he reflected on what truly meant value, success, and personal fulfillment. All the external shine that once seduced him, parties, clothes, women, wealth, lost its color before what Sarah had achieved. Emotional freedom, self-esteem, and genuine love. He realized he needed to reevaluate choices, priorities, and above all, the way he related to the world. Sarah's message was simple but powerful. True life isn't measured by superficial conquests, but by what we build within ourselves, by growth, by integrity, and by the ability to learn from mistakes. Michael felt a mix of regret and inspiration, and for the first time considered that he could still change the course of his life, even if it was too late to fix what he lost. In the following days, Michael began to act differently. Small changes emerged, almost imperceptible, but significant. He woke up earlier, read about self-development, tried to understand feelings he previously ignored, reflected on past relationships and on how he could become someone better. Status and ostentation lost importance. He now wanted something that would give him purpose, something that would fill his soul, and not just his vanity. Sarah's invitation and the message itself became a daily reminder. True victory isn't over other people, but over oneself. He realized that by abandoning a life of superficiality, he was opening space for growth, for introspection, and who knows, for building something lasting and true. The pain of having lost Sarah still hurt, but it transformed into fuel for his own transformation. For the first time, he understood that life could be more than titles, expensive clothes, or appearances. It could be full, meaningful, and finally his. Sarah's story reminds us that true value isn't measured by appearance, status, or others' approval, but by the strength to rebuild, invest in yourself, and cultivate self-love. Michael lost because he didn't see that, but you can still act. Reflect on how you've treated yourself and others, transform challenges into growth, and build something meaningful for your soul. Use this story as inspiration to value what truly matters, invest in your development, and seek relationships and opportunities that make you flourish. And if you want to continue learning from emotional stories that teach us to grow, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos.